Well, hello, everyone. I'm Brandon Bonediffer, and welcome to another podcast. We are stepping up our game over the last couple of weeks. We've been doing a handful of these, connecting with community leaders, different business owners in our area, people in the health profession, and those that are helping us kind of cope through this pandemic. We're going to start doing video. Special thanks to Country Wireless. I got to give Clint and the guys over there a huge shout out. They've been able to update and improve my internet speed, so I'm able to connect with you guys all a little more rich, and provide a little more content for you as we continue to be safer at home. Today's episode is going to be a fun one. We're going to be talking to Mark Cournoyer. We're going to meet Mark here in a minute, and we're going to be talking about his role in ag culture. He is a teacher in Auburndale, which we'll talk about here as well, and just his means of connecting with his students, his community, and those in the dairy industry throughout central Wisconsin through some different creative things that he's doing, and just how he's staying connected and engaged. So guys, welcome to the show, Mark Cournoyer. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. A little background for you guys. How long do you think we've known each other, Mark?
This goes back to fall of 1999 when I student taught at Spencer High School. Brandon was the talkative officer on the team that year, and always knew that members of that team, still run into them today. And you guys have just done amazing things in the last 20 years.
Holy cow, 20 years. Do you see aging at all? I mean, definitely.
No, I think we're going to realize everybody's true hair colors here in about 4 weeks, though.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to get a haircut the Monday before this whole COVID stay-at-home order was issued by the governor. So I'm good for another 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks tops. But I think a lot of people are going to be definitely and there's some of us that don't have hair. So for those, right. I mean, they're probably coping with this quite well. But yeah, Mark and I have known each other for 20 years. I didn't think it was that long, and
right.
I have to imagine we won't get into too many stories because I'm sure you probably have this is my show and I don't want to embarrass myself too much. But, one thing that I always really gravitated towards in high school was ag culture. It really helped me from the time I was in 7th grade all the way up through high school, and then further beyond that, even to today. I mean, I reflect so heavily on what I know about ag and what I've learned in those intro to ag classes, and just through some of the connections. There's people I talk to on a weekly basis, if not a daily basis, that are prominent in ag in some form or fashion. And I've been able to, just keep those relationships alive. And it's those relationships like this one here that, is keeping us connected. And,
Right.
the fact that you student taught in Spencer, and here you are in Auburndale, which honestly is in the same neck of the woods. It's been good to see over the last 20 years that we've been able to stay in touch. Let's talk a little bit about your role in ag, and kind of prior to COVID-19, what was life like for you as a teacher in Auburndale, as just someone that enjoys ag culture and the roots of our labor?
As an agricultural education instructor here in central Wisconsin, we have a really tight-knit bond. And any agricultural teacher will tell you, in the state, in the country, will tell you that the spring is the craziest time of the year. Not only do we have speaking contests, we have career development events that we're training kids for, award applications that kids are going through, and that's at the state level things that we're getting things prepared with. And then you look behind me, I wanted to show off our greenhouse, because the pinnacle of every ag program, in my opinion, is our lab facilities. And here in Auburndale, our greenhouse is one of those things that just brings a smile to everybody's face, a smell that goes throughout the whole school. It's the smell of spring, and it's the sights and feel of spring. And so when we had left, we had 275 baskets that we had just planted up. A handful of flowers and things. We were in the midst of our maple syrup season, and we had 275 taps out in our school forest and in the community, and we had hauled in about 1,000 gallons of maple syrup, or maple sap, which we take to a local processor here, Maple House in Auburndale. And when we got the call that school was ending, I inherited a greenhouse that had 275 baskets that still needed to be watered every day, and 275 maple taps that still needed to be collected. So um, we made it through. We collected another 1,000 gallons of sap. We ended up with 61 total gallons of syrup produced. And we do that on the halves with Maple House. They do all our boiling down, so we don't do all that on our own. But then we also were able to carry on in the greenhouse. Our paraprofessionals are coming in and delivering food to our different students. We got 300 different meals that they're providing on a bi-weekly or a twice a week basis to cover them for the week. And so they were also instrumental in helping us get a lot of vegetables planted. As the need arises, I think more and more people are going back to what they can do at home because they're stuck at home. So
and
that's,
if you guys follow me personally, the same thing. I had the same idea a couple weeks ago. I started a little tray, and I can't take full credit for it. My dad actually got it for us, but we started a tray of vegetables that we've been growing here in the house, and hopefully if the weather cooperates, we'll be able to plant those outside here. But
right.
you know, tomato plants, green beans, things in that nature. So and I think that's what's kind of cool in a weird way about this pandemic is, I think, you know, I always said for a number of years that, you know, my kids and even my generation just haven't really had the experience of to have to live off the land and fruit for themselves. And if there's ever been a time that in our modern history that we might reinvent that wheel, now is that time.
Right. And like, you know, everybody looks at something like Pinterest and like, oh, that's a really cool idea, or I'd like to try that, but I just don't have the time. What better time do you have than now to look at those things? And so when we left school, we here at Auburndale are on Google Classroom. And so we had to transition into a very hands-on, for me, a very hands-on type classroom where we had been cutting up deer and processing maple products, doing hands-on safety lessons, working the greenhouse, to now a virtual site where we're providing opportunities for those students to carry out those hands-on activities at home with some ideas. Right?
Are you shipping deer carcasses through at home pickup?
Right. No, that's not happening anymore. But the idea though is, you know, we're gearing these kids up. One of the projects they're working on right now is the different types of gardens, and whether you've heard of a vertical garden, square foot gardening, straw bale gardening, or lasagna garden. I gave that as an activity for them to research that. And we're doing something similar to what you're doing with your vegetables there, but we're going to do curbside pickup with our plants here, and they're going to get a variety of 15 vegetables in a flat of 4-inch pots. So they'll get tomatoes, peppers, cauliflower, cucumbers, pickles, pumpkin, squash. I say peppers, but it'll be 15. I'm not expecting, you know, everybody's kind of like, I'm shooting for the middle where everybody wants to try something, and this will give them a good variety of vegetables to try at home. But then for those students to have that background of, I don't have a big backyard, but
Sure.
Here are some ways that I can do it on a smaller scale that I can still enjoy the fruits of my labor.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned Pinterest and you mentioned these different activities. For parents, I think a lot of parents are discovering not only how much they should appreciate their teachers and those that are in the education industry, but a lot of parents, I think, are seeing some of these virtual learning experiences, and they're connecting with their students learning at a different level too. And I think ag culture really kind of drives that home. I think there's a lot of parents that probably see what you're doing and say, you know what, maybe that's something we should embrace as a family or just as individuals. Have you got any feedback from any parents that saw something you did and said, hey, Mr. Cournoyer, that is really cool. How can we expand on that?
Well, I always look at the lessons that we do in regular school. If they're gathered around the dinner table at night and you ask your kids, well, what did you do today? And nothing. If in our area, if it's one of those situations where if they ask, well, what did you do today in school? Well, we got to plant, or we got to do X, Y, or Z, and you bring it up at that dinner table conversation, every night now is a dinner table conversation with their family on what they did in their specific, learning experience, a book they read, a video conference they were joining in on. The video conferencing thing, that's difficult. It brings out a lot of vulnerability in people, because when you're sitting on a grid and 15 people are sitting there looking at you and you looking at them, that's different than just sitting in your desk. And
everybody's looking at the back of your head.
Right, exactly. And now you are the focus of, what am I doing with my hands? Am I playing with my eyebrows? All those things are in front of you. And bringing up those dinner table conversations, and then having that conversation of, digging deeper, like, where's my milk coming from? What work went into, what hands were put into providing the food at which we have today. And that's always been one of the tenets of agricultural education is providing that resource of, I really should think about where my food is coming from and appreciate the people that produce it and the people that process it and got it to our table.
Absolutely. And even expand upon that a little bit. Not only the people that are directly producing it and processing it, but the entire infrastructure that goes into our whole food system. Right. There was something, and you probably remember this from this is one thing I constantly bring up, and I remember from when I was in high school, and I say it all the time now, is name a profession in Wisconsin that does not somehow connect to the egg industry.
That's absolutely correct. And if you think that if you're going into accounting and it has nothing to do with agriculture, you're sorely mistaken, because everything comes back to a connectedness in agriculture. Whether you are going into nursing and somebody comes in with aches and pains, and and understanding where those aches and pains come from here in central Wisconsin, or if you're a professional that works in massage therapy or chiropractor and somebody comes in with a backache and you tell that person, well, just don't do any heavy lifting. You don't understand. I'm a production agriculture employee. This is what we do. Oh, well, then here are some things that you can do to make your life a little bit easier or take the stress and strain away. But we're all connected in this. And whether you're a plastics manufacturer, and this is one of the interesting things I learned this week, just in the milk supply chain. If you're used to producing X amount of plastic bottles a week, and then all of a sudden we have this huge demand coming from a different side of the sector, and we have to produce 30% more bottles, but our entire supply chain over the last 3 years says we need to produce this many bottles. We got all this milk sitting here, but we have no raw product to make the packages that it's going into.
That is huge that you're saying this, because I wanted to touch on this a little bit about the dairy industry, and just for those that have been following over the last couple of weeks, we started this campaign, National Milk Carryout is something that, we kind of thought of and put together, and it's all about supporting the supply chain. And, people told us, or people said, well, why is there a limit on milk in these stores? But yet at the same time, we know that the kids aren't at school consuming the milk and people aren't in the restaurant. There should be a surplus of it, correct? Yep. So it's all about that supply chain. So I do want to touch on that. So if you guys are listening, you want to learn about that, we're going to talk about that in this segment before we go. But I kind of want to keep going down the conversation right now about being a teacher, because one thing I've noticed in the last couple of weeks, and really what kind of gravitated me to you, is I saw a headline that says, "You don't know Jack." And I'm like, what is Mr. Cournoyer talking about today? And I mean, it was just, you did it, and the title of it was about cheese, and you don't know Jack. And I'm thinking, I hit play and I started listening to the video. And by guys, if you are interested yourself, there's a link in the description. You can check it out. But you've been doing these videos now for what, 2-3 weeks?
Last night was night 21.
Okay.
And so if you know me, I love cheese. I've been around it for many, many years. When I used to ride the milk route with my uncle, he would do poor man's grilled cheese. And that's where you take the cheese, put it in the sandwich, put it in a bag, and put it in your dash of your truck. And when the sun hits it or the heater of the truck hits it, by noon you have melted cheese. And that was his cheese sandwich. But I've always wanted to do this because, you know, there's times you wish you had time to tailor something to what you wanted to do. And this is as good a time as any. And so I looked at it like, you know what, this is my legacy to my other ag teachers across the state, to myself as far as in my classroom. But I set it up because, you know, we're the Napa Valley of cheese here in Wisconsin. We have more licensed cheesemakers in Wisconsin than anywhere else in the world. And we have, I mean, you want a variety of cheese, you want it with a certain spice, a certain tang, a certain packaging, a certain idea, you can find it. It all started with the World Cheese Championships that were held in Madison before everything got locked down. And Ken and Joellen bring back a wide variety of cheeses from there. So I started with that, and we just picked the cheese of the day. And I do it in one take. And I have a different hat and a different shirt because as ag teachers, we collect a lot of these things from the different places we go. And I started out in the Jack one. Every cheese has its story. The Monterey Jacks are the base of all the different cool, like if you want a turkey jack, if you want a pepper jack, if you want to get crazy and you go with a ghost pepper or a Carolina Reaper jack, it's the basis of this. And there was a guy by the name of Dave Jack who in the 1860s took the idea from some Franciscan monks and marketed this cheese all over, and it became the basis of you know, the Kojak that we know today. And all these different things that we find, these little known facts, and I put a little Cliff Clavin in it, and I put a little Sheldon Cooper in it. Sometimes we put a little Charlie Barron's in it, but you know, I try and keep it under, you know, 8 to 10 minutes. Sometimes
So
a little shorter. I haven't gone over 10, but
so you impersonated Charlie Burns?
I have not impersonated Charlie Barron's, but it was a couple, 3, 4 flavors or something like that.
I'm gonna have to watch that one.
You know, it's but each one last night was the Greek feta. And everybody, you know, some of these people have protections on it. So like feta and Gruyere need to come from a certain region, be made from a certain cow or a certain animal's milk. But they call it the protection distinctions or origins in Europe. And so that way you can't really technically call it feta unless it has this, if you're in that region of Europe. So it started out, and then somebody suggested, hey, you should do a YouTube channel. So then I made a YouTube channel and try and upload it from there. And you're more savvy on that, but I found that YouTube takes a long time to upload stuff, but then it makes it a lot easier to make links. And I think we got our best day, I think, was 80 viewers, but it's all good and it's a lot of fun. And my kids and my wife have all like, hey, you should try this and you should do this. And we've had Taco Kitty show up, which is our outdoor cat that came inside, made an appearance as he walked by behind the camera one day. But you know, if it's dairy products that we need to promote, we need to break down the barriers of, wow, I never knew that I could put this cheese into this. Or if I want to find out where local is, I had a code breaker. And nothing secretive about it. It's all out there. It's just, if you want to know if your milk is Wisconsin bottled or if your products are from Wisconsin, 55 is a code that you find on the side of the container. And then each individual dairy plant has a specific code. Like, so for instance, we were talking about milk before. If you go into Festival, Pick and Save, you'll see that Kemp's and the or not the off brand, but the generic brand. So it'll be their brand Festival milk or Roundy's milk will have the same code of 55-1500, which means that Kemp's bottling down in Kenosha bottles both their name brand and then their private label for whoever wants it. So if I wanted a branded milk, I could contact, you could contact Kemp's down there and have your own branded line of milk, and it would still be coded 55-1500. But each individual plant has their separate code beyond the Wisconsin 55.
So I don't want to suggest this, but is it fair to say that people that want to support Wisconsin dairy farmers should look for that code on packaging as much as they can?
Oh, yeah. And in Wisconsin, I mean, we don't have to go far. I think if you were in, North Dakota or places like that, you could, look for those things. But for the most part, most of your milk outside of the super big box stores are going to have that code here in Wisconsin, or have a Wisconsin code. Local bottling plants that we have, I mean, Morning Glory Kemp's has one in Kenosha and in St. Paul. Quick Trip, they bottle theirs down in La Crosse. But I mean, they're bringing milk in by the semi-load. And so most of that milk is coming from, because milk is so perishable, it's coming from a very short distance or limited distance away. It's just cool because you can find on most dairy products, yogurts, butters, you name it, they'll have a code on it. They're not required to have the code on it, but when you see the code, you'll see a 2- number, which represents the state, or a double number, which represents the state. Minnesota, if you're watching Minnesota, your number is 27. And then it'll have a dash, and then it'll have code after that of the actual plant number that it's coming from.
Well, that is some education for today. I'll definitely start looking for that.
Yeah.
And that's one thing too, is we'll talk about this again a little more as we get into it, because I don't think people understand that a lot of our farmers here, a lot of their milk goes to processing plants for cheese. So simply buying milk isn't 100% the solution for our neighbors and friends that live down a road from us.
Correct.
Now, this videos that you've been doing, and for those that are interested in YouTube, and like Mark had said, this is something that he's always wanted to do. It's something that he's wanted to, connect with an audience. There's a lot of people that have connected with me over the last few weeks saying, hey, I want to get involved in more video. I want to use the technology. I want to reach a larger global audience. And you don't have to do that now because you're at home. You can do that whenever. And there was a video that I did a couple weeks ago about the importance of stepping up your game during a time like this, because at this time, a lot of us are hunkered down and we're looking for content. We're looking for things. There's been numbers that have shown over the last few weeks that there's been a higher consumption of social media viewing by individuals, more screen time than there ever has been before. And that's because people still want to feel connected. They still want to feel that engagement. So they're looking for it. The challenge is, what we've seen over the last couple of weeks is there's been a huge spike in the amount of news content revolving to COVID-19. And there's been a dip in the amount of organic social media, everyday true blood content that we really are thirsty for. So if you're an individual out there and you want to teach people how to bake, you want to teach people history about cheese, if you want to show people how to plant grass or make their own basket, whatever the story is that you do or you have to share, now is a great time to do it because people are looking for connections. They're looking for that information. And what makes YouTube so powerful, it is the second largest search engine in the world. And you can reach people across the entire world. I don't know how well you guys follow my story, but over the last year, I've built connections in almost every single, for sure, every single continent, but almost every single English speaking country. I developed a planner. And just yesterday, I was talking to someone from Sweden and that uses our planner. And he's a physician. And the story that he was telling me about what they're embracing was powerful. In the next breath of air, I was talking to a oncologist from Washington, and how those two individuals, half a globe apart, still both in the medical industry, had very much the same story. And then I was talking to a nurse in New York that uses our planner. And again, the same thing. We are very much connected, and the internet provides us a lot of opportunities to do that. And really what's cool about YouTube is when you do these videos, and I don't know if you're doing it, Mark, is take advantage of those tags. Really think through your thumbnail, the description and title of the video, and then your tag. So for example, you don't know Jack. Okay, that's a great catchy title, and I'm excited about that. And I might want to look at that. But from a YouTube standpoint, the person's going to see the title, but is the computer seeing that title? So maybe a better way of saying that is, you don't know Jack. The history of Jack cheese, which is actually, it's Monterey Jack, right?
Right. Yep.
So they
Yep.
actually, so by putting that history of, that's that keyword, that's that search term that people are going to be looking for. And then when you put in "you don't know Jack," that adds that human flavor and interest to it. So I always tell people, when you're creating your title, you're creating your description, you want to ping in on what people are going to search to, but you want to connect to the individual so that you can establish some type of virtual relationship with them. So
Correct.
guys, if you're in the video, now's the time to own it. There's never been a time in our history where video is being consumed as powerful it is. And this is stuff, if it's static content, is going to be out there for a long period of time. You said you had 80 views. Over time, a month from now and 2 months from now,
Yep.
if you go back and you add in those keywords and you change up some of that description, I would imagine you're going to get organic traction for years to come. And that's what's really cool and exciting.
Yeah.
So as we're talking about your story and these videos and what you're doing, you know, there is my notes section locked up in my computer here, so I'm going to wing it a little bit. As you've been talking about these videos and you've been doing this virtual teaching and you've been connecting with your students, have you felt any frustrations from any parents that saying this is too much for us as individuals to try to consume at the same time trying to deal with the pressures of the pandemic and then just trying to maintain their livelihood?
Right. And here's when we launched, I mean, you got to understand, this is a huge, huge learning curve because we were already set up in an online platform that we used for different facets, but putting all our eggs in one basket. So I'll give you a best case scenario of like, here's parent frustration, but for the most part, parents have been very, very receptive to it. And when we reach out and do phone contacts or like just, you know, check in and messaging with them, hey, I'm here if you have any questions. Oh, that's great. You know, we're doing the best we can. So I have, say we have a parent that has 4 children, okay? One is in college and one is in high school, one's in middle school, one's in grade school. The college student, and they live out in the country and they have internet, which works, but never have had to test the internet with 4 different devices pulling on it for various, you know, classroom needs. It was the college student was always off at college doing their thing, and the kids in high school, middle school, and elementary school were able to do some of their homework at home, and then maybe 15-20 minutes they would need here. And so the strain on the virtual, I don't know, the bandwidth of, you know, that infrastructure was really seen right off the bat. And as we looked at it, you know, we came back after a week and then we reevaluated and said, all right, you know what, you have to consider what's really important. And making sure, first of all, making sure and checking on kids and making sure that they're safe and they feel that they're safe and they're not overwhelmed. Number 2, looking at content and like, what is our real purpose here? Making sure that, you know what, maybe we're not going to get through 4 books this year or 4 chapters, but we do really well on the 2 chapters that we end up doing. But we make sure that everybody's there. Number 3, checking in and making sure that all those students are able to be a part of it. Some still don't have internet, not currently, I'm just talking about in the first week, some don't have internet. And we worked with a couple different providers to either get hotspots. And this went on, you know, districts wide across the state that they, you know, the internet providers really stepped up. And we were able to get those kids the resources that they were able to have. And then figuring out a family schedule of, okay, we're going to do homework. This kid A is going to do homework from 8 to 10. This one has a video conference from 11 to 12. You know, there was a huge learning curve that occurred there. And, you know, we meet with our leadership class every morning from 8 to 9. And we had a lot of projects going on. Like we're doing our Auburndale Veterans on Main, which is similar to the Marshall Walk of Honor. And we were just finishing that up. And we still meet as a group, and that's one of the most fulfilling things for me as a teacher is being able to sit down with those 16 because they feel it's important. And not every class we do that. You find that some don't have the bandwidth to do a video conference like we're doing here. But that's the normalcy. And at first there was a lot of, I'm going to give you a demonstration of what it was like in that first week of video conferencing for them. But there was a lot of this, okay? Because they didn't know. And doing this it makes you vulnerable.
It
and
does.
as week 2 and 3 went on, now those screens have come down, and we've really grown as a class to trust in each other, and to, everybody's learned that little bit of vulnerability isn't bad. And
I've actually heard a lot of people tell me that their posture is a lot better too, because,
correct.
and I'll give you a description here. You guys are probably watching this camera here, but I'm going to move to this camera here. Is what people have been doing is they've been propping up their laptops or their computers to get a higher angle, so they have a little bit better, visual connection with the camera, so they don't have so much of this. And that's good. If you can use a shoe box, you can use a phone book. If you live in a town that's more populated than, like, say, Chile, sorry, if you're from Chile, I apologize. But just, we've had to really embrace this. And I think that's what's key is people are always learning, and we're learning together. And that's what makes these times somewhat exciting, because we're all being exposed to something, but at the same time, we're all trying to learn and be introduced to things that we haven't had to connect with before. And just like you said, we're the kids, the parents, everybody's resilient. And even though there is some frustrations, I think the school systems in our area have really worked through some of those struggles, and I think parents are getting through it as well.
Right. And there's teachers have been like, I'm very proud of my colleagues, because to do this in to be known in 3 days time, hey, we're not coming back and our superintendent said, it could be 2, it could be 20 weeks. This could be our last time meeting in person. That we're all heading into this. And one of the most inspirational quotes on that was when we met that day. He said, we're all first year teachers, and you have to think back to your first year teaching, where you have all this excitement and ambition and fear and all these things rolled up into one. And there's days where things are really going to tank. And there's also going to be days when you these little battles that you win are you going to build upon them. And by the time you're done with this, you're going to be a better person for this. You're going to have more tools in the toolbox, and you're going to really appreciate your classroom that much more. And that's, we all miss our classrooms. We miss our kids. We miss those daily interactions, whether those are conflicting or they're, the days you give hugs. We're all wired to be connected. And that's one of the most difficult things as a teacher, that you miss those smiles and those interactions every day, and you crave those. And through what we're doing here, this is kind of our legacy. 50 years down the road, they'll look at this and say, what did you guys do? And you can say, well, we met virtually. And, these are stories that you'll tell your grandkids down the road.
Oh, and that's absolutely it. I got criticized a little bit for taking some of the aerial pictures that I did of Marshfield and Rapids, because I was out and about, and I practiced the social distancing. No one was within 100 feet of me, for sure, by all means.
Right.
But it is history. And I think that's where I really feel through all this, we're going to change, we're going to adapt, and we're going to be better connected. And I think, we look back in 2 or 3 years from now, we're going to reflect on this and say, we're all a little bit stronger because of it.
Right. And I want to get that out too. So I'm here at school in our greenhouse, but I think all of our ag teachers in the same boat. There were some that had an entire farm that had to be liquidated, and finding homes for these animals. We were left with a greenhouse with 275 baskets that either A, we can let die, or B, we don't know how long this thing is going to last, and we're going to figure out a way, whether it's And I come in by myself. I have a couple aides that come in because they're helping with food service, and they help take care of watering and doing things like that, but nobody's on top of each other. We're operating a greenhouse as it was an individual business. And for a lot of these people in the greenhouse industry as well, they are used to having a lot of employees and bringing in and doing these things, and they're keeping their employees safe as well, and taking the brunt of that labor upon themselves. And we're all going to be getting creative as far as how these plants are going to get marketed, with about, a month away from Mother's Day, I think. You're going to see a lot of interesting marketing techniques coming about. And they'll figure it out. I mean, we've seen all kinds of awesome things. I mean, I went and got ice cream the other day at Melody Gardens, and we had car hop service, and everybody stayed in. One person took the orders. The other person was just in charge of delivery and sanitation things. And if that little bit is how we feel human and how we feel normal. No, my kids have not stepped out onto grounds other than what we have at home for the last month, besides going, on a drive, playing left, right, straight ahead, just for them. And that's a game that we played, and
don't get around the marsh. Don't find yourself around the marsh, because sometimes you run out of those options. It's just either left or no right.
Yeah, dead ends don't count. We didn't dead ends, but I'm in my wife is in healthcare. She's a nurse, and I don't want to bring any of those unintentional meetings back home to us, and it's the sacrifices that we make. I don't want her bringing something home with her, and I don't want to have myself exposing her to something that, she's going to be on the front lines taking care of people here in a couple of weeks of, right now it's pretty low key at the hospital right now, but it's the calm before the storm. Yeah. And, my heart goes out to all those people who are working in that, who are putting themselves in the line every day, and making sure that everybody's taken care of and being safe.
Absolutely. We said in the beginning of the broadcast, and we talked through a little bit about, we wanted to dovetail and really cover this whole agriculture, dairy industry that, is being impacted by this too. And just to kind of backtrack a little bit, we've seen, some of the images, and we've all probably experienced it a little bit. A month ago, 5 weeks ago, we had students in school that were in school, and they were consuming milk and dairy products through their school's lunch program. Even sometimes some of those even have breakfast programs in place. And I think one number was told me, in a small school district, maybe the size of Auburndale or Spencer, there's 700 students in some cases. When you process that and you look at then like a town like Marshfield, where there's, anywhere from 300 to 400 kids in a grade, that's there's a lot of milk that's being absorbed through just that delivery service. And then you look at all of the food services, the restaurants and things in those nature that are using milk. So you have that world, and you have people consuming that product in that sector. And we'll just call that sector the food service sector. Yep. Then we have the retail sector, which is, you go into Walmart, Festival, Quick Trip, and you're buying cart milk, bag milk to take home and consume. And we saw it in toilet paper. I don't know why, TP. I have a new appreciation for two-ply, because we were one of the unfortunate families that had to choose single-ply rolls. So if you guys have any two-ply out there, my birthday's coming up, so keep that in mind. But in all seriousness, there became a demand for that retail dairy industry, because there was limits, or not even, shouldn't say limits, but we couldn't go to school, we couldn't go to restaurants, and utilize the supply chain through food service. And so many people, I heard them say when they saw the pictures of the milk being dumped last week in West Bend, they simply said, "Well, can't you take it to a food shelter or a pantry?" Well, I don't know how many pantries you can back up a tanker full of milk and run it off into cartons. That just doesn't work that way.
Right.
And then there's other people who are saying, well, there's limits at the grocery store. Can we get it into the grocery store? And you hit on it. Hit on it so key there when you said that it's not even just the dairy farmer, it's the processing systems and all the things there. We were making X number of plastic liter jugs for so long, and we don't have the supply chain to make 30% more jugs. And then on the other side of it, those that are making cardboard cartons, they don't have the utilities or the infrastructure in place to make plastic jugs because they make cardboard cartons for the last 20, 30 years. So as you reflect on that, what are some of the solutions or ideas or some of the conversations that you've had with individuals in the dairy industry, how we kind of embrace this and move forward and tackle it? Because it is a challenge.
Well, I'll put it like this. I'm just trying to think of different analogies to connect with different people. And let's say that you have a family of 4 and you have a minivan, okay? And then all of a sudden you agree with your neighbor to pick up their 3 kids and take them to soccer practice and bring them home from soccer practice. The vehicle's still gonna do the job, but there's gonna be a whole lot more wear and tear on the vehicle in doing the task. And so, we have one of the safest food supplies in the world. Okay. And first and foremost, people need to understand that the farmer is doing their best job to take care of the animals and provide product to the consumer, that you don't understand the sacrifices that these folks go through on a daily basis to provide what they do for you. It is the best people that you'll ever know. Hearts of gold, the people that will pull you out of the ditch at 2 a.m. because you hit a drift at the wrong time, because these are the people that they are. As far as the supply chain itself, if people go about buying what they buy, and I get it, you're buying more milk than what you normally do, but on 2 gallons, we're going through 1.5 gallons a day. We just make the trip every day. Milk's one of those things where the supply is never going to run out of milk. The supply is never going to run out of cheese. You just got to use your head about it, and you're going to be able to get milk. You can do drive up milk. You can do quick trip milk. You can do milk at the grocery store, whatever your preference is. But, panicking about, and that was the thing on toilet paper, like, oh my gosh, we're going to be locked in our houses. And I think as they've released these things, like, okay, now it's going to be, we're going to close the restaurants. Okay. I talked to a friend the other night. He's like, yeah, we did 170 fish fries when they do normally 90. People are adjusting to these things. We're never going to run out of food, but like what you were saying there, Brandon, with, as far as supply chain, as we can't turn one factory off and turn another factory on and just replace it. It takes time to do these things, but 1/3 of all cheese and dairy products goes to food service. And so when schools shut down, they're still providing milk cartons in all the lunches that are going out. So we have 300 different meals that are going out 5 days a week for the kids here at Auburndale and at Marshfield. The number, it's a staggering number. It's several hundred more than that. Neilsville, I know they're doing about 600 to 700 meals a day that they're providing. And, it's, if you want to buy something to help support dairy here in central Wisconsin, cheese, there's 10 pounds of milk that goes into a pound of cheese, and that cheese will last in your fridge for a long, long time. Milk has its limits, but as we're doing milk, you guys are finding other ways of using milk, whether we're making smoothies, frappes, as we're cooking, we're finding out these different recipes. Everybody also, you didn't mention this one, but when toilet paper disappeared, the next thing to disappear was milk and sugar, because everybody was figuring out that they can bake now, because they were always
they're figuring out they have the ability to bake,
right?
Not if they can bake.
Yeah. And there's
a lot of experimental baking going on out there.
Granted, 2 weeks ago, I made bread for the first time. One loaf was awesome. The other one failed. But, you have a safe and secure food process out here. And the farmers, the truckers, and you just have to understand that, just like in the healthcare field as well, if these people get sick, then that's one less person on the line that can be working in the line, and they're worrying about these things. And the thing you have to worry about, you don't have to worry about as well, like this milk is going to getting dumped down the drain. It's not, they're choosing the guys that they're dumping the milk from. They're still getting paid for their milk, but they're choosing, the dairies are choosing to keep that milk out of their supply chain. So that milk has a home, and it's getting dumped into a manure pit. So that way it can get disposed of later. You can't just dump milk down a ditch or down a drain or whatever. So they're choosing places that have the ability to take this milk on in their pits. So that way it doesn't become a environmental danger as well. So, there's the supply chain and understanding that these people are doing the best they can with what they have in the times that we have. And no one is going to go hungry. Everybody's going to figure out a new recipe, but choose something dairy to do with your family, whether that's a cheese dish or whether that's, Alton Brown has, from the Food Network, he's my go-to guy because he's a teacher of cooking. He's a teacher of product, and he also goes into the science of why the things do what they do. We made 2 different types of mac and cheese this past weekend, and then he said, don't make sure you tune in for tomorrow because we're going to show you how to do fried mac and cheese. Never made that before, and oh my gosh, that is my new go-to appetizer / meal / feed the kids. But as don't be afraid to go out there and put yourself out there and try some different things in the kitchen. Support your local dairy farmers. Now, here's the other thing that I've said too. With the stimulus package that's coming, if you can, your choice of food security, get to know a farmer, figure out, if somebody has the ability to buy a quarter of beef or a half a hog. These are things that, you can buy a whole hog, have it processed, and also buy a quarter of beef, have it processed, and buy a freezer to put that all in for one of your stimulus checks. I'm not saying you have to do that, but take a look at your situation. And if you really want to know where your food comes from, shake hands with the person who's producing it and have that feel-good feeling of, I supported local. Talk to those people, find a steer, find a hog. If you don't know a farmer, get a hold of Brandon or myself. We'll be able to hook you up with somebody in the area here. Talk to your local processors, but make those connections, because what you pay on the hoof to the farmer is going to be far less than what you're buying an individual package for in the grocery store. And your biggest concern that night is going to be going into the freezer and saying, do I choose porterhouse or do I choose pork chops? And that's a really cool feeling for people who are of that mindset. And once you get to it, you'll never go back.
Absolutely. And that's huge. You mentioned something that we've been talking so heavily about, cheese and milk, but the dairy industry or the farm industry is a lot broader than that,
Right.
And I think that's very prevalent, because just no different than we said 25 minutes ago. And if you guys are with us still, I appreciate it. We've been on almost for 50 minutes here. And I've told every single person and I've talked to throughout these podcasts is my goal is not to make this an hour segment. It's not to make it 15 minutes. It's simply to carry on a conversation that is engaging, exciting, and has value. And I'll be frank with you, Mr. Cournoyer, Mark, is that, we've covered a lot of ground here and we've kept the conversation going. So those that are still with us, I appreciate that. Mark, obviously, we have covered so much and we've given some good opportunities for people to support the dairy industry, but there's also another need out there. And as a lot of news agencies and people have contested over the last few weeks, is there's a blood supply shortage. And you guys are doing something here. I believe it's on April 19th. 15th, that every year you guys have done a blood drive through one of the activities of your FFA program. And there's been so many activities and events that have been canceled. Why was it important for you to find a way to continue with this event?
Um, we have done blood drives here for better than 25 years. It was something that was started before we got here, with my predecessors, and relationships were built. And when this hit, there were blood drives, whether it's the blood center, Red Cross, what have you. Um, they rely heavily on high schools and colleges for their blood drives. They have a concentrated group of people, generally young, healthy people who have that goodness in their heart, who want to donate blood. And if we get them donating blood at a young age, we generally, get them donating for life. When this hit, over 5,000 high school and college blood drives were canceled across the country, which sent.
Just pause there for a second.
Yeah.
5,000.
5,000.
And if most people know, to have a blood drive, you have to have a minimum commitment, I think, of 25 people.
Right.
So to process that for a second, it's 5,000 blood drives and a minimum of 25 people. Quick number. That's what, 125,000. I'm not.
Yeah.
25 million.
125,000. 5,000 times 25 would be 125,000. Correct? Yes.
Yeah.
Three
So
zeros after
that, and I only do that to put that in perspective a little bit.
Right. And not every blood drive is 25. Like our blood drive in the spring, we hit 90 people in one day. And for us to, we're working with the Red Cross on this one, for us to tell them, no, we're not going to do it. Our community this is what our community is. They're a community of givers, and blood centers, Red Cross, blood donation facilities have been exempted as far as the things that can be canceled or have to be canceled. They take extra precautions as far as every utensil is wiped down before and after you enter. Blood drives are generally socially distanced anyway. The healthcare providers that are the phlebotomists that are taking your blood, do the temperature checks and everything like that. And so when Jason asked, hey, can we make this work? We can't have it at school anymore because all school activities were canceled, but we are having it at the Auburndale bus garage, in the double bay of the bus garage, which is just like a gymnasium, just a little smaller. We set a goal of 35. People can go to redcross.org, and they have to register. We've taken walk-ins before, but with this one, we have to have registered online to donate. And so if you go to redcross.org and you type in 54412 as far as our blood drive, and I think you have to make sure that you're out 2 weeks, so that it pops up on April 15th. Here's your chance to save 3 lives. Whether these are cancer patients, accident patients, people who didn't know they were going to need blood. This is the one thing we cannot manufacture is blood. And so, they will accommodate as the schedule fills. Right now, I think we have 14 signed up out of 38. But if you are well and you want to do it, I donated 2 weeks ago, or was it a week ago? But I felt the need at that time that I was able, and I did. I felt totally comfortable. Everything is sanitized to the max, and you are dealing with healthcare workers, phlebotomists and techs who have your best health in mind. So I know we're not going to hit 90, and we don't have facilities to get 90, but to make a difference here, I think that's a way for us to, watch after a fellow man, woman, as we humankind. And that's, one of the greatest things I've seen, that, we're taking care of each other through this, and we're here to pick each other up and make sure that we all get through this together.
Absolutely. And I know for many people, it's been awkward at times, obviously to keep a social distance, a physical distance, but then yet try to connect and support somebody. I've had a lot of people that have kind of walked up to me, and then they kind of got close and they stepped back and they kind of gave me a look. I think it's something that, we're all trying to understand. And this is just a good way of, trying to connect with someone that you never even met, and they have a need, and you want to give. So
Right.
more power to those that sign up. So jump on that website, and hopefully we can fill up all the spots that are available and make some type of impact. And it'd be good to follow this to see what other blood drives come up in our area, because this need's only going to grow as we continue to move forward.
Right.
Mark, we covered a lot.
I know, it's been fun.
Yeah, and just a kind of quick recap, guys. We talked about a little bit of history of Mark, what he's doing virtual learning. If you haven't watched any of his YouTube videos, or I encourage you to do so. I mean, if you're out for a run or a walk, prop up your phone or your iPad or your computer and just go for a walk and listen to Mark talk about the history of cheese, because there's a lot of history in Wisconsin, and there's no better time to kind of understand your roots a little bit better, and what we're doing here, and even connect with Mark and give him some inspiration as he continues to kind of educate those around him. We are very much going to get through this. Our food service system is strong. In any way that we can continue to support that local farmer, if it be by supporting dairy products. One thing that we talked about doing and are going to do is just providing more recipes that have more dairy in them, or more Wisconsin meat needs, more protein. Everybody loves protein. So with that being said, Mark, thanks for being on this call. This is actually the first video call that we did, so I think it went quite well.
Awesome.
We'll have to see how people tune into it. If you guys have any questions for myself or Mark, hit the comment below. Go ahead and give us a message. I'm sure that we would both welcome any feedback. Guys, thank you for tuning in. If you got a story idea, as you guys have been watching, maybe a time or two, my eyes drifted off. There's been a handful of people over the last hour that have connected with me about this story or that story, something that they felt was interesting. There's a situation going on near Stratford right now that we don't know much about. Hopefully by the time you watch this, that has been resolved safely. But there's also stories in Wisconsin today about the voting that's taking place. I've seen, touching on real quickly, high school kids with great health stepping up and working at the polling stations, so that others that maybe were in a situation where they didn't feel safe being in that environment were able to stay home. So again, just really amazing stories coming out of our area as we continue to weather this storm and move through together. Guys, I'm Brandon Bonifer. Thank you for tuning in. If you like what we're doing, hit the subscribe button, follow our page, and we will see you more in the future. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great day. How was that?
Well,